Hi, it's me, Vicky Marie, and in this video we're going to look at part 3 of the podcast, a special podcast that Mark Williams Thomas made during the time that Nicola Bulley was missing. Now, I think I need to say here that as we start this podcast, he is actually at the scene for the first time. The other two podcasts he did, he was at home. This actual podcast, he is at the scene. And the other thing I want to mention before we start, a thing that was very curious, Mark was at the inquest day 1 and tweeted quite a bit. And then I think he just didn't turn up on day 2, or he was there in the morning, but he didn't turn up for the verdict. You know, it was very odd. And then since then, really, he's not said anything. So he seemed like he had a lot to say at one point. Now, this may be just because in his capacity as, I don't know, is he mainstream media? I don't know how you would class him as mainstream media, social media. He's sort of a bit of both, isn't he, really? Because he's not in the police, but he's made this sort of career about, you know, being some sort of expert, although as far as I know, he hasn't actually caught anybody. But, you know, his comments and people accept his comments. I just went right off him when he decided, he tweeted out that Oscar Pistorius was actually innocent, and that's just not true. I don't believe that for a minute. So that put me off him. But he does, you know, I'm trying to watch and read the things he says, because he does have some insights. Obviously, he's got an insight into that world that we don't have an insight into. So that's the other thing I just wanted to do, this mysterious disappearance on the day of the verdict. You know, he wasn't in court as the verdict came out. Had he already been briefed what the verdict was going to be? So it was pointless in, you know, other fish to fry, I don't know. So I just wanted to say that before we start. So let me share it. So just before I start as well, I want to say thank you to everyone for subscribing, for watching, for being my members, for buying me a Ko-fi, for liking my videos, for sending me a super chat, super thanks, super sticker, for PayPaling me. I get lots of support from all of you in different ways, and I appreciate all of it. And membership is very important for me because it gives a stable support to my channel, you know, regular support. Membership is €1.99 a month, and we have a special members live every Thursday evening. I'm also serializing my new crime novel on there. So if you are in a position where you can become a member, please consider it. But apart from that, being a subscriber, liking my videos, even just watching my videos are all free ways you support my channel. So thank you so much. Okay, let's see what Mark's got to say.
Welcome back to Talking True Crime. I'm Mark Williams Thomas, and I'm here live on the scene at St Michael's on Wyre. Behind me is the River Wyre.
Now, you might notice the river does seem to be flowing a little bit more.
There was significant news yesterday in relation to the ongoing search. 21 days since Nicola Bulley vanished. This is the press conference where they talk about it.
Ah, yes. So now this is very important. So this is the 21st, I think, or well, I don't know what actual date he is there, but he's going to be talking about the Rebecca Smith press conference. And he said there is significant news. Now, I heard rumours that it was him who found out, because he's there on the scene. So he's out there talking to people. People will talk to him. And somebody has let this slip about the significant vulnerabilities of Nicola. And it is said, or I heard, and again, this is rumour, but it makes sense, that he, after this press conference, he was determined to find out what these vulnerabilities were. He did find out what they were, and it was him who put the pressure on for one reason or another. Some people say he was going to go to the newspapers with it, or other people say that he just put pressure on by saying, look, we need more information. And then later, after this press conference where Rebecca divulges the vulnerabilities, or that there are vulnerabilities but won't go into details, within a couple of hours there was an announcement of what those vulnerabilities were. So Mark had a hand in that, definitely.
As soon as she was reported missing, following the information that was provided to the police by her partner Paul, and based on a number of specific vulnerabilities that we were made aware of.
It was Paul who told her. It wasn't the family, it was Paul who mentioned this. I bet it was the first thing out of his mouth about her vulnerabilities. And anyway, I'm not going to, you know how I feel about that, but Rebecca's very defensive.
Nicola was graded as high risk. That is normal in a missing person from investigation with the information we were in possession of.
So that was the first time that we knew that Nicola Bulley was a high-risk missing person. Really important when someone is reported missing for the police to categorise that as quickly as possible, because of course the first few hours are really significant in any investigation, including a missing person case. The superintendent, as well as the assistant chief constable, talked in terms of her being reported and the fact that they brought in specialist teams very, very quickly. They searched the area and they were specifically focused on the fact that she was a high-risk missing person. As a result of that, they announced that information yesterday.
He has a few problems with his earpods again here, so I don't think I'll be buying myself a pair of those anytime soon because they seem to be a pain in the ass.
Following that, of course, it created speculation, particularly amongst the journalists in the room. And I'm sure against many of you at home who have followed this story, asking the very specific question, how is it that she was deemed vulnerable? This is the superintendent's response to the questions.
Okay, so firstly, to cover the information about Paul, it's normal in any missing person investigation that you obviously gather as much information at every stage about the person in question, which is no different, and we did that with Paul.
You know, it's like with Paul. She's so condescending. It's a shame for Nicola that Rebecca was brought in to be, because, you know, I always try and look on the positive side. In the beginning, I thought, oh, well, she must be good. She's worked her way up in a difficult environment for women. But she's just so contemptuous of everyone. It's like, listen to me, I know it all and you know nothing. It is awful, contemptuous.
I'm not going to go into the details of those individual vulnerabilities. I've asked you to respect the family who are going through unimaginable pain and distress at this moment. But those vulnerabilities based our decision making in terms of grading Nicola as high risk, and have continued to form part of my investigation throughout.
So that was a senior investigating officer giving their press conference yesterday morning. Quite a hurried press conference, which for the very first time saw the senior investigating officer, as well as the assistant chief constable, Peter Lawson, giving their overview of the investigation. For the very first time, as I just said, we heard that Nicola was a high-risk missing person. That led to the question.
Now, if you're hearing like glitches in this is not me. This is his earpods, and that they're not, unfortunately, using those, it affects his sound quality. But anyway, reading between the lines, I do think he doesn't have much respect for Rebecca. Just get that, you know, that he's quite, well, he has said, to be fair, he has said openly that the whole police investigation was messed up. And he won't be happy because he said in an earlier podcast that Peter Falding was one of his close friends. So, of course, he won't be happy at the way Peter Falding was treated.
Questions being asked. And as a result of that, still, people were left with the view, what was it that caused her to be a high-risk missing person? Indeed, yesterday, I spoke to the police and I said to the police, why is it that I'm being given information that the police, the emergency services, attended that property in the weeks prior to it? They said, we'll try and find the answers and get back to you.
Yeah, so it sounds like it was him who's found out the information about the visit on the 10th of January.
Later on, a number of hours later, they scrambled a press release. That press release was finally released last night, and I will tell you what they said. Over the last 4
There's the AirPods gone. So it seems like he's precipitated the press release by finding out information.
48 hours. I've been in contact with the police and family. I continue to raise concern about the information, and their response back, bear with me, early yesterday. Sorry, here we go. Sadly, it is clear from speaking to Paul and the family that Nicola has in the past suffered with some significant issues with alcohol, which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause, and that these struggles had surfaced over recent months. This caused some real challenges for Paul and the family. As a result of those issues,
you know, watching this again, I'm incandescent with rage. I am so angry about this. You know, Nicola had in the past suffered with some significant issues with alcohol, which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause, and that these struggles had resurfaced over recent months. This caused some real challenges for Paul and the family. Oh, poor Paul. Now, the thing is, he never mentioned anything about it in his interview. This is the first time that this had ever come out. And then at the inquest, all this was played down. It was a blip, wasn't it? A blip. Just a little blip. You know, it seems to me that people in this case say what suits them at the time to say them. 1 minute she's struggling, then she's our rock. She's the centre of our family. That was what was said, you know, and then it was, oh, significant issues with alcohol. Gosh, I have to take really deep breaths because I'm so angry, and I'm trying not to get angry. I'm trying to be, this is why I could never be like a politician or anything like, because I cannot, I find it hard to stay level with it because, you know, I felt like Nicola was, when this came out, I felt like Nicola was hung out to dry. She had no voice to reply to any of these claims made by someone who, it seems to me, has problems with alcohol. Anyway, as a result of these issues, a response car staffed by both police and health professionals attended a report of concern for welfare at Nicola's home address on January the 10th. No one has been arrested in relation to this incident, but it is being investigated. Well, remember that was investigated. The policeman had forgotten to put on the camera, apparently. He's not been, it's just lessons to be learned, wasn't it? Lessons to be learned, few issues, but nothing, no further action. And then 10 days later, this woman was dead or missing, and presumed, according to the inquest, to have died within 10 seconds of entering the water. Gosh, you know, Nicola's been so badly let down. She really has been badly let down. Nobody, I feel like Nicola's life could have been saved, whichever way you look at it. And the police, Paul, and the family, because it's Louise who phoned the ambulance that day. You know, why did she phone the ambulance? Was it because Paul asked her to? Why do you phone an ambulance because your sister is drunk? There must be more to it than that. Or trying to make it, were they trying to get her sectioned? And let's not forget that on that 10th of January, she was groggy, disorientated. She said that she didn't know how this had happened. And the very next day, she had to go to A&E for a scan because she had a head injury that she said she'd slipped in the water from the dog's bowl and banged her head. Now, if you could take any one of those things and that would not be significant. But you put all that together, her sister phoning an ambulance, her being sort of drowsy and uncoordinated and saying she didn't know how this had happened. The following day having to go to A&E for a head injury. Disappearing on the 27th of January into thin air, not being found for 23 days, body covered in bruises, Fitbit still registering movement for days afterwards, man in black, screams, fishermen. You put all that together, you could take any one of those things. It was just one of those things that had happened and it still feel a bit suspicious. But you take all those things together. That's why people are still interested in this case.
Response car staffed by both police and health professionals attended a report of concern for welfare at Nicola's home address on January 10th. No one has been arrested in relation to this incident, but it is being investigated. They went on and said it's an unusual step for them to take to go to this level of detail about someone's private life, but we feel it was important to prevent further speculation and misinterpretation. We've explained to Nicola's family why we have released this information, and we've asked you for privacy for the family to be respected at this difficult time. I know my contact with the family last night is that they are devastated. They are in a really difficult position now. You know, not only are they facing the torment and the turmoil of Nicola missing, but now they've had to deal with her family life being revealed. The questions being asked now by the public, rightfully so, and of course it's the media, is why? Why now have police taken the decision to release that information? And I have to say, I'm critical of it. I'm critical of it because they should have dealt with this right on day one. We should have been notified that this was a high-risk missing person and just...
Yeah, so that's one good thing that Mark is good for, because he does know how police forces normally act. And don't forget Peter Blakesley as well. Peter, he was critical. So many people that are involved with police, you know, either retired police or they're still involved in it. They have been openly critical of the way this has been dealt with. So this is not social media criticising. Becky can sit there as defensive as she like and blame it on everybody except herself. But it's even her own peers who are criticising this.
Given a brief amount of context in terms of why that is. It didn't need to go into the detail that they've gone into now, but just giving it so that we had understanding of why Nicola went. 3 weeks on to release this piece of information, because questions being put to the police just showed that they had really a lack of control as far as the media goes, a very unclear strategy as far as reporting to the press. And of course,
yes, an unclear strategy. And just let me say that in one of the previous podcasts, and that him and other media are saying, oh, people go, you know, ghouls going to on these morbid, what do they call them? Morbid travel things. So he's gone there. He didn't have to go there. Why is he there? So it's okay for him to go, just not anybody else. He can go, but you can't go, or I can't go, but no, Mark can go. Of course he can.
Of course, in the meantime, the speculation that was allowed to grow through social media, through everybody growing interest in this story, and of course, crucially, the fact that people didn't know what happened. The torment now sits with the family. And I know Peter Folding, a good friend of mine, spent some time with the family when he was up here. Let's watch this clip of Peter with the family.
Well, I was with Paul and the Nicola's sister.
Yeah, this again, as he says, let's watch this clip of Peter with the family. That is not the family. That is Paul and Emma. And I presume this is the family liaison officer.
You know, husband today, and obviously extremely sad and upset. And Paul wanted to have a look at the potential entry point, you know, where the phone was found. And I took him along, and that was quite emotional, to be honest with you. You know, he's in tears. It's not a nice thing to do, to sit with a sort of a grieving family. Really, it's quite upsetting. and I had to sort of hold back the tears a bit at some stage. It was not particularly, not a thing I enjoy doing, but unfortunately I have to do it quite a lot. And we chatted. He was here about 4 hours with me today, because we completed our searches. So we were just generally chatting about things, and about Nicola and everything else. And obviously that's a personal thing, but yeah, we're just trying to get to the bottom of everything.
So let's look at the circumstances. There are three options in terms of what's happened to Nicola. First is that she turned up on that day having walked with Willow, and she decided to go into the water, either by choice or by accident. And as a result of that, she then lost her life in the water. I'll unpick that a little bit more in due course. The second option is that she chose to go for a walk, and then she placed the phone, she placed the harness, and she left Willow and she went away, making her own choice, her own decision. Whatever was going on in her life, she decided that moment in time she needed to move on. Or the third option, and of course the most sinister option, is that there was a third party involved. The police were very quick to rule that out. And of course, at the time, they had the information that she was a vulnerable missing person.
Now, at this moment in time, you can see that Mark is right on, right on the ball with the different possible things that have happened. So why did he suddenly just later on I suppose maybe just because of the inquest result, he felt like he couldn't interfere anymore. I just don't know. It seems to me as we watch this video, he's more or less convinced more of the foul play, or that she's run off somewhere.
And clearly that led to their focus on the river, on the water, with the intention, of course, or the thought process that she'd gone into the water. Let me unpick that. So going back to that exact location where the bench is and where the water is, in order for her to have gone into the water at that point, she had to have gone down a relatively steep bank. You can see the bench there, and just to the side of that bench is a steep bank that takes you down to the waterfront. At the bottom of where that river is, there is a small area of rocks. So initially you land on rocks, and then beyond that, you can see there from the pictures, takes you into the middle of the river. The river in that middle area is about 3 meters deep. So if she'd have got into the middle there, she could well have suffered, she would have struggled most probably in terms of potentially swimming. But we do know she is a good swimmer. So how is it that she ended up in that water, in the middle of the water? Because surely she would have gone down the edge of the bank and stayed where the initial water was, a very shallow area covered by rocks. That is the police's theory, that she went into the water there. Why do they think that? Well, very clearly because of where the phone and the dog were. Let me recap. The police information is that on that morning...
No, I think actually that's not true. I don't think that's why the police thought that's where she'd gone into the water. Is it? Or, well, that's where they thought she'd gone into the water, maybe. And they thought she'd gone into the water because they could not find any CCTV footage to show her coming out of the field, and they had the witnesses that supposedly saw her in the field, so they had presumed that she had never come away from the field. But of course, it's a moot point whether she was ever in the field, or did somebody just pick her up and carry her off from there?
She was on a mobile phone talking on a Teams call. They have her sighted around about 9:10 in the top field. She then moves down from the top field, and around about 9:20, they have her phone in the locality of that bench. Then around about 9:30.
I wish they would make their mind up whether it was in the locality of that bench or on the bench. There's all this, the phone moved to the bench and it was in the locality of the bench. Again, just, we still don't really know, do we?
She's still connected to the Teams call that she was talking to, and the phone was found face up on the bench. That phone, during the course of her call, the Teams call, she didn't speak and she didn't have the video on. So there was no audio and no video connected. That phone was found on that park bench. And then between the park bench and the water, we're not sure exactly where, but potentially on the river bank, because that is what Paul has said, is that is where the dog's harness, Willow's harness, was found, and that was handed to him.
So Paul has said the harness was found on the river bank and it was handed to him.
The dog was free. The dog was running loose between the area of the park, area of the bench, the river, and an area which is a gate. There is, you can just probably see to the slightly to the right. See if we can find a picture, Jodie. Just to the right of that, there is a gate, a silver metal gate, which opens on a swing. So it's like a kissing gate, and that stops the dog from traveling further. So the dog was confined within this area. So and let's use this as an example, had Nicola returned on the route that she came on, which is down a path, it's just to the right of that bench. You can see, you can't unfortunately see it, but just to the right of that bench is where the gate is. Had Nicola returned on the path that she came on, there is no CCTV. So when the police say that we do not believe she left the area, there's no certainty in that at all, because she could have left the area on exactly the same route that she walked on. And I'm here and I've walked that route, and in order to come away from where the park bench is, which is just behind where my arm is, she walks along this path just in front of me and along, and then there's a footbridge that she walked on when she came on the walk. She wouldn't have been seen by CCTV, and she could...
He's always referring to it as a park bench. It's obviously not a park bench. It's not a park.
Quite easily have disappeared up there without being seen by anybody at all. Jodie, let's just take a quick break. Jodie, is there any questions?
Yeah, hi there, Mark. So I think one of the big popular questions that are being discussed right now is, should the police have released details about her vulnerabilities? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one, because, of course, if Nicola is still alive, and it's a big if, then she will be aware of this, and she'll be aware now that her public information has been put into the public domain. I think the problem is the manner in which it was released. If the police had been very open from day one and said, look, there is some vulnerability, she's a high-risk missing person.
Yeah, I remember saying that at the time when this information came out, was that if she had run away because for whatever reason, and she was sort of thinking of maybe going back, once she'd seen that the world and his dog all knew about that she was a raging menopausal alcoholic, that could have, you know, and if that was me and I'd run away and I was thinking, oh, I think maybe I should go back, but thinking, oh, I'm definitely not going back now because everybody knows about my medical history. It was disgusting, actually. The more you think about it, you know, the outrage just returns.
And that happens all the time. You know, there are high-risk missing people whose information is put into the public domain because the public are the eyes and the ears of the police, and there's no long-term impact on those people because they're already receiving, you know, the support and the help. It gives an understanding. It allows people to contextualize quite why she has gone missing. We all have issues in our life at certain stages, whether that becomes a drug dependency, whether that becomes alcohol, whether that becomes depression. That's the fact of life. That's the reality of the brain. The brain is a complex thing. And as a result of that, we all have struggles. I've had struggles, you know, people close.
Oh, that's nice. And it's true. We do all have struggles. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but you wouldn't want it brandished all over the TV and, you know, all over the world, especially because it wasn't your story. You know, some people choose to tell their stories of the struggles that they've had. You know, if I put something out about my life or like about my book, about my experiences with stalking, or, you know, I'm making that choice. Nobody's going out there and putting my, you know, saying it for me, and I'm not even there to defend that. You know, people might say, oh, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? I'm not even there to say, you know, in this case, if it was like Nicola, it's different when you put your own story out there. Put your own story out there, you put your own slant on it, people can ask questions, people can criticize you, and you can come back and stand up for yourself. Nicola, her battles, if they even existed, these were the battles that were put out by her partner, almost in an attempt to discredit her, it feels, or to make a reason why. I honestly do. That is the biggest red flag for me, when people start sort of suggesting that there's something wrong with you. I had it from my ex-partner. Yeah, they saying I had mental health issues because I didn't want to be with him, basically. So, you know, sometimes what someone else calls a mental health issue is meaning that you're not going along with what they want you to do. So this it does make me. So it's nice what Mark is saying there, but you know, everybody does have struggles. Everyone. There's nobody out there, even someone who doesn't talk about it. You know, you look at people, especially on Instagram, social media, you think, oh, they're having this fantastic life. They're not necessarily. You know, these are just photos. These are just snapshots into people's lives. You don't ever know what goes on behind closed doors. And you don't know what struggles people are facing every day just to get out of bed.
Friends, we all have struggles, but we mustn't let that overrule what's taking place now. She's still missing. I do believe the police got their strategy wrong. Put the information out right at the very beginning. Say she's a high-risk missing person. Give a little bit of understanding of what that meant. She's struggling at the moment. She's going through the menopause. She's got some issues in terms of depression, mental health, but she's getting the support. She's loved by her family. Get Paul onto the television. Get Paul to do a press conference alongside the police and say, we're really struggling with family. We're here to support.
Yeah, see, he's saying get Paul on the TV to make a press conference alongside the police. He's noticed that. He's noticed that there's been no press conferences with I wish people would stop saying the family, because it's not the family, it's Paul. Paul is just one part of the family. He is the part, not the family.
Supporter. We want her home. Get that embraced element so that the public see Nicola for the real person, and Paul is talking to them. The police did not want Paul to do a press conference. They didn't want Paul to appear in front of the camera. Totally wrong strategy. And now it's back.
So you're saying that the police didn't want Paul to do a press conference and they didn't want him to appear in front of the camera? That is so unusual, isn't it? Is it? I mean, to me, you know, whenever there's been, gosh, I've seen so many appeals by families and partners for missing children, missing people, you know, and sometimes I do get people to do it when they think that there is something suspicious there because they try and trip them up. But they didn't want Paul to do that conference. I wonder why. I wonder why they didn't want Paul to do an appeal, and they wouldn't appear with him when he decided then that he was going to do that one with Dan Walker. And then the police didn't. And again, when you say the police, who do you mean? Do you mean Rebecca Smith, Sally Riley? You know, we have these all-encompassing words like the family, the police, but who are we specifically talking about? Yeah, why did they not want Paul to do an appeal? And his interview was not really an appeal, was it? He never turned to the camera and said, please let Nikki go if you're holding her, or Nikki, please come home. You know, we can sort anything out. He never actually did that. He knew she wasn't coming back, I think, for whatever reason. You know, if he didn't, anyway, I can't really comment on that, can I?
Backfired. What else, Jodie?
So we've had a number of questions come in. Obviously, people can ask their questions in the comment section by #AskMark. This one's from Lottie. What would be your plan of action now if you were the SIO, a senior investigating officer, on this case?
So I think now we're very clearly in two strategies. You know, the hypothesis that the police had that she fell in the water at the point of the bench behind me there was their focus. And I can understand that to a degree. And I say to a degree because the reality is, in order for her to have gone into the water there, she would have had to have got to a position where she dies. Now, how is that possible? Well, she could have gone into the middle of the water and obviously got a reaction in relation to how cold it was, and then passed out. But if that had happened, and you can see it's just where in front of where Peter and Paul are looking there, if that had happened, her body would have sunk to the bottom. And within a matter of hours, the police divers were searching that area, and they've been back and searched that area. So her body would have been found there. But if it wasn't there, what is the likelihood of her body traveling downstream? And you can see behind me where there is a flow. And that is where the major problem exists. Because in order to do that, not only would her body have to have negotiated 2 bends and an area in the middle of the river, which has got some undergrowth, but also, and this is the most significant, would have had to have just moving in the right way. So you can see behind me is the weir. That is a weir to which you have to get a body over. Now, bodies don't float on the water surface. They float underneath. Well, obviously, some part of the body exposed over the top. So they had to have got to the weir and then got over the top of the weir. And then, having got over the top of the weir, they would have then had to have got across the rocks. Travelled down here.
Gosh, we were just hearing it from his mouth. It's impossible. And do you know when PC Plod went to do that video that was supposed that the coroner took as proof that it could have happened, the video actually proved that it couldn't happen. Mark Williams Thomas is now saying it couldn't happen.
Here to a bend that is 90 degrees. Got to a bend that is 90 degrees. And as that 90 degrees would then have to have then travelled round the bend 90 degrees. Right? On that day, the water was 11 centimetres higher. We know that because of the records say that. So 11 centimetres higher. So in order to travel down here, she would have to go. The tidal element of it stops at the weir. And we know from tidal movements is that had she travelled down here, the chances are that tidal would have brought her back up again to some degree. So the problem
There you go. There you go. I mean, surely the police must know this. Why are they so happy to accept it was an accident when it clearly was not?
I have with this is that in order to have travelled this distance, she had to have not only gone over 2 major obstacles, but also travelled round bends. Jodie.
There you go. So she would have had to not only have travelled over 2 obstacles, but she would have had to go around bends. And all this only at night, because nobody saw her floating on the surface of all the people that go walking and that. Nobody saw her. The fishermen didn't see her. Nobody saw her. But somehow she did do that. Get over 2 obstacles and travel round bends.
So we've actually got a bit of a follow-up question here from Luke D on YouTube. If you were the SIO, again, sort of same question, what would you have done differently from the outset?
Well, I think I'd have been very clear to the public. I'd have said to them, this is a high-risk missing person. And as a result of that, you know, we are urging people, does anybody know, has anybody seen her on that day? Please come forward. You know, we're looking at the aspects of her vulnerability. And as a result of that, you know, please, we're encouraging some support rather than just simply close it down and say, you know, we've ruled out all the other hypotheses. You still need the other ones. You still need to consider all 3. You just need to be able to be very clear that actually we've got to focus, and this is why we've got to focus. You get much more of an understanding from the public, but also the criticism wouldn't sit with the family. You wouldn't be 3 weeks on now suddenly in a position where the family are having to try and, you know, well, apparently now gone into hiding effectively because of the situation that developed yesterday, which was all of the police's making. Let's be very clear, this was all of the police's making. They tried to coordinate it completely. They got it wrong. What did they expect yesterday when they said she was a high-risk missing person? Did they expect no one was going to ask those questions?
Yeah, so basically it was him. Anyway, I mean, if Mark happens to be watching my video, which I doubt very much, I do want to thank him for this very good analysis and that he's doing. And yes, it does seem, I would say that he was probably at that press conference. He straight away, as soon as they said that she was high risk, he'll have been asking people, finding out from his contacts, this, that and the other. he's found out that there was the welfare check. He's challenged the police, and the police are then worried that it might get leaked out. So they've decided to announce it, but they managed it wrong, didn't they? Because, and he's right what he says, when they came out with this information, and then Becky very condescendingly said, well, I'm not going to go into it. No, why mention it then? You're not going to go into it. You should never have mentioned it in the first place. Obviously, as soon as you mention it, people are going to start investigating into it, and someone like Marky is an investigator. So well done, Mark. But it's a shame that it was Nicola's, you know, they could have managed it better, and then all the full information wouldn't have had to come out.
And try and get some clarity. And then the information they've released, I think it's far more than they needed to release. They just needed to be very clear that this is someone who was struggling with issues in their life. The investigation is separate to the media strategy. The investigation, I think, has been very positive in many ways. Every investigation we can look in hindsight and be critical of, but I think the investigation has been good. I think they've failed to coordinate it from a media strategy in a world that we live in where there's 24-hour news and social media has a huge impact. You need to address some of those issues, and you need to be working with the family. You need.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they know we live in a social media age. I mean, surely, or are they so outdated in their, you know, dealing with social media? Social media is like everything else that's controversial, isn't it? Immigration, anything like that. You can't deal with it by pretending it doesn't exist, or just saying, no, it shouldn't happen. Or you've got to deal with it. You've got to manage it. That's what part of you know, being life is about, is changing with the times, adapting. You know, that is something that human beings are very good at. That's why we've survived all these years. You have to adapt. Things change. You know, it's social media now. It was the telly, or it was newspapers probably at one point, or just people demanding the vote. You know, now we've got the people traffickers and immigration, but you can't just, people will always want to immigrate or emigrate, whichever way you look at it. They'll always want to do it. So what you've got to do is manage it better. You know, you can't stop it. You do have to be realistic with some things. You know, not just say, oh, well, that's it, shouldn't happen, blah, blah, blah. You know, white noise, I'm not talking about it. Deal with it. Deal with it.
To talk to the family and say, listen, the backlash from this could be significant. We need to say this. We need to show that Nicola, you know, has struggles in her life, has difficult issues, and get the public to totally understand. I think Nicola left this area in one way or another. She either left the area further downstream in the water, so not at the bench, but further downstream where it is tidal, or she's still in this area having moved away and sadly, you know, her own self, you know, to move on with life. Those are the two strong views for me. I rule out, quite rightly so, I think, where the police are as a third-party involvement. I think those two first theories on them.
I wonder why he rules out third-party involvement. See, clearly there, so he says, I rule out third-party involvement. I really don't. I wonder if he knew then about the man in black or the screams or the bruises.
Most likely.
Well, he wouldn't have known about the bruises, of course.
So thank you everyone for bringing in their questions into the comments section. Some great comments coming through and some great questions for Mark. There's a couple here on the same sort of line. So this one's from Kay Caller. Was Paul aware they were going to give details about her vulnerabilities? And Susan Lowe, just adding a little bit here, did the family know the police planned to make the announcement regarding her vulnerabilities at the press conference? What's your thoughts on that, Mark?
So the family were kept involved. There was a long meeting the day before yesterday where the police met with Paul and talked to Paul and gave him a bit of an update with what was going on. They were caught very much on the hoof yesterday when it came to the fact that they were going to release more information. They talked to them about what was going on and, you know, the fact that obviously at some stage maybe this information would get out. But I think they were confident that actually it wouldn't. I don't know why. It shows a naivety from the press office. I spoke to the press office and there was some understanding of some acknowledgement that they got things wrong and they were trying to put things right. They're 3 weeks down the road with their media strategy, which is why we saw the Assistant Chief Constable and the SIO come out.
I bet there was a massive panic about all this. But you know, I think right from the beginning they've been on the back hoof. Right from the beginning, I think they were just misled right from the beginning. They've never caught up.
Yesterday at all. I think the problem is that this has played itself out in the media. It's played itself out in the public because it's become fascinating. The public want to know answers, and understandably so. In this world of the crime genre, which everyone's an armchair detective at home, everybody wants to know what's going on. I can totally understand that, and the police really have to wake up. Lancashire Police, be a big learning curve for them and other police forces to understand that actually, do you know what? There is two aspects of a criminal investigation nowadays, or a missing person investigation, and that is the way that it's conducted behind the scenes and the way that it's conducted in front of the scenes. And they both have to work together, but crucially, what's visible in front of the scenes also has to be done in a way that it's protecting the family. And I feel very sorry.
Yeah, and I agree. It has to be done in a way that it's protecting the family, but it also has to be done in a way that it's credible to the public. You know, so if you're saying to the public, like I've seen these American sheriffs say over the investigations I've been covering over there, you know, they just say, yes, I can't, I'd like to tell you more about that, but I can't because we can't compromise the investigation. Well, what can you say to that? You know, if the police say that to you, I can't compromise the investigation, this is you have to accept that. And people do accept it. Of course, they can't tell you what's going on until things are resolved. You know, they take the public as idiots. You know, this is what Rebecca Smith treated the public like idiots. It was like, well, yeah, you've just got to shut up. And not because we're giving, you know, we're not telling you why you've got to shut up. You've just got to shut up because I've told you you've got to shut up. But I'm not giving you any reason why you've got to shut up.
For them this morning, because I think the police have done them real injustice. I think as a direct result of the way they've handled this, that's created greater pressure for the family, and it's caused more torment for them. Torment that they shouldn't have to be living with, when the bottom line is that Nicola is not here. She's vanished. Where is she? That's what should be the most important question. Not why are they releasing all this information? There are people coming out saying, you know, there's victim blaming. I don't believe that. I think what's happened is that there's right that this information is put out there, but they've done it in the wrong way. And it doesn't take a lot to look at it. If you've got experience from working in the media, it doesn't take a lot to look at it and go, strategy, change it, get it different, put that information out, be totally transparent and open, and it will cause you far less problems down the road.
Brilliant. I just wanted to actually, there's a great comment here from Nico. This is more of a statement. The public are part of the investigation in the sense they represent tens of thousands of pairs of eyes in that area. What's sort of your thoughts on that?
Spot on. You know, amount of times I've said the public, the eyes and the ears of the police. The police pull the jigsaw puzzle together. They use their experience. They've also got contacts, and they've also got access to material. In a world that we live in where technology rules our lives, you know, that creates a footprint. You know, where was the mobile phone? Who's been?
Yeah, and I still think if anything ever develops in this case, that anything else ever does come out, it'll be because somebody says something, some member of the public says something. So it seems like a lot of the members of the public are saying things, but nobody seems to, I don't know. You know, there's been things said about the situation in the home. Was the DV in the home? You know, and it seems to be that it's been said so often that there must be something in it, but it doesn't seem to have. But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean if there was issues in the home, doesn't necessarily mean that there was any foul play at the end of everything. So, but I still think that one day somebody might come forward, say something, or some evidence might turn up.
In communicating on the mobile phone, where have they been in terms of, you know, cars, because of obviously analytics in terms of cars, where have they been on the computer, all of those things is a footprint, and that of course is really important, and only the police have access to that. But what the public do is they provide direct information. Who has she spoken to recently? What is her state of mind? Who has she been in contact with? Public, who have they seen? Who have they talked to? You know, particularly in an area like this, which is frequented by dog walkers, it's beautiful here. You know, those people will see her, and therefore the public are the eyes and the ears. They give the information to the police pull that together and create the jigsaw puzzle and ultimately solve the case. So the public are absolutely vital. You need to keep them on side, but also you need to work with the family. The family have grown more and more frustrated as time goes on. And let's be clear, I've worked on so many missing persons and murder cases, mainly now in terms of reviewing those murder cases to see if I can find new evidence, the suspects, and develop the case. And, you know, I've been very successful in doing that. And what is really important is that you don't want to alienate the family, you need to communicate with the family, and you need to be in a position where you are giving them the right information. The problem is family are suddenly put into a world they've never been in before. You know, they're suddenly in the media spotlight. They're dealing with trauma.
I mean, it must be awful. It must be awful to, yeah, first of all, you're dealing with your missing loved one. And then, yeah, all the media stuff and that. I don't know if Nicola's mum and dad, Dot and Ernie, if they do read social media or watch social media. We know that Paul definitely does. Definitely. And Emma, of course, she's very active on social media. So, you know, some people aren't active on social media, not only older people, some young people aren't, I suppose. You know, everybody's different. But yeah, I suppose what do? You've got to get to a point. You probably are best, but I don't know if I'd be watching true crime channels and sending CCTV off to true crime channels if I was PA. But anyway, there you go. That's what he did.
Torment, unanswered questions. So they look to you for help, you being the police. And if the police strategy is wrong in terms of care, then it all falls down because they are entirely reliant on the police to support them in an area where they think they will know what they're doing as far as the media strategy goes. They've got it wrong. What we've now got to go back to is, you know what, whatever the background of Nicola, whatever was going on in her life, she's still missing. And there are people out there who can help because she's gone somewhere. She hasn't simply vanished. So is she in the water? In which case her body will turn up at some stage. Is she on land somewhere? And hopefully, as people walk out, as it gets more and more warm, people will find her if that's the case. And of course, if she's moved on to move on her own life with whatever's going on, then she'll have contact with people. Those three things exist, and the people that will solve that is the public. Jodie.
Brilliant. I just want to bring in a couple of questions here, and thank you everyone for leaving them down below. There's been some great stuff come through. You can ask your own, hashtag Ask Mark. This one's from Nicole H. What did you think of the communication style of the press conference and the tone in the press conference? They're saying they found it unpleasant. And just adding on to that question, this one's from Jerry Edmonds. Do you think Paul should now do his own statement and press conference now? And obviously sending love to the family there as well. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on those 2 points?
I thought the press conference was far more professional. I like the fact that the Assistant Chief Constable came out there and set out from a very senior officer's point of view the seriousness of this case and the impact that it's had on the community, the policing style. I think in terms of the senior investigating officer, she's clearly qualified. She's been in police for a very long time and investigated very serious cases. It's always a difficult one because it's about getting that balance right in terms of coming across professional, but also coming across in an emotional and engaged way. And that's a very difficult challenge. And some people don't always rise to that challenge. Some people just don't have it on them. They can be quite cold. It doesn't make them bad. Actually, at the end of the day, is it important to us whether or not that person that's leading the investigation comes across in a very sympathetic and heartful way? Or is it more important that they're very good at doing their job, albeit their communication and their humanity element is perhaps not on the same level as some other people? So I don't want to be critical. I think she came across in a very professional way. I think that they misunderstood.
So I think he says he doesn't want to be critical, but I think he's being critical in a very discreet way.
what the impact was going to be of saying that this was a high-risk missing person. Totally miscalculated that. So I was much more impressed with their press conference. They were clearer. That was what's most important, is that the Superintendent Riley, who'd become the face of the media, she'd say things and then she'd say something that differed from what she said previously. And that causes problems because people...
Yeah, silly Sally, she did. I think she did. She said many conflicting things. But then, to be honest, I think everything's been conflicting in this case, especially the timeline. The timeline has been a joke.
People hang on detail. And if you're not entirely clear on detail, people will look and go, well, actually, that's not exactly what you said. What did frustrate me yesterday was the SIO, the superintendent, was being a little bit critical about people jumping to conclusion, people coming up with ideas and theories, people suggesting that the police had said this. Well, a lot of it was because you had said that. You had been unclear in the terms of the way you'd said something. Rather than saying, we have 3 hypotheses, we're focused on all of them, but at this present moment in time, we're particularly focused on her going in the river. That's not what they said. What they said and what it came across as was that we have one main working hypothesis, is that she's gone in the water. Okay, the detail is very similar, but the way that it's put across has a massive difference in understanding and meaning. And that is what they got wrong. And as a result of that, we're now in a position where they came to a press conference being critical of everybody else having a go at them, when actually they needed to reflect a little bit and go, do you know what? We got some of that wrong. We were unclear in some of the detail and the nuances of the way that it came across. And that's our fault. And they should have been more honest. But the problem is how many senior investigating officers, how many police officers would stand there? How many members of the, in working life, how many people would stand there and go, do you know what? I made a mistake. I got that slightly wrong, but I want to put it right. And to be fair to the police, when I spoke with them in detail, the police said, we did get some things wrong. We have made some mistakes here. We're going to try and put that right. I hear what you're saying, Mark. And a lot of what you've been saying, we totally agree with. And of course, at the end of the day, it now puts Paul in a position of, where is he? He's really supporting the police. He's very much behind this. The police have said, don't talk to the media, keep quiet. But there is a position where we can see there now, Peter is walking with Paul and the family liaison officer.
So, well, if the police told him to be quiet, he wasn't quiet, was he? Because he did the interview with Dan. I nearly said Dan Wootton, then Dan. Oh, God forbid, Dan Walker, not Dan Wootton. He then also sent a voice note to Sky News, didn't he? He then released a recording of the helicopters and the children saying that the helicopters are looking for Mummy. He then released the CCTV to Ghastly True Crime Channel. So he didn't do what the police said he should do and not speak to the media or keep quiet. And of course, Emma did 19 interviews. So,
the person in the tie behind the back, and this is,
I'm wondering if Mark tried to get an interview with Paul, and Paul said, "I've been told not to," because how would Mark know that unless Peter had told him? Peter Folding. But Mark said, "I spoke to someone very close to the family this morning." Well, that could be Emma, that could be Paul, that could be anyone.
Peter, you're having some real detail, showing them what the work that he's done. One of the questions that was just asked was, what about Paul now? Should he do a press conference? I think he should. I think Paul should come out, supported by the rest of the family, Emma, the best friend, whoever it is. I think they should come out and they should say, do you know what? Nicola's life recently has been difficult. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for her. But let's not focus on that. Let's focus on finding her. We all have challenges in our life. Open his heart. And if he opens his heart and he's very clear, I think publicly we'll all get behind him. Jodie, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm very cold here, and also the fact that, let's move on. Let's deal with a couple more final questions. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so I think there's a really great question here, actually, just to cap us off and cap off the podcast, and just to remind everyone to obviously subscribe to True Crime News Quest. We've been covering this case fully. We've had some great insight from you, Mark. So remember to subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. So this one's on Lottie, the final one to cap us off today. The police hinted yesterday they are still resourcing this fully, but might scale down. What happens then?
Yeah, I don't think we're far away now. The Assistant Chief Constable has to. The sad reality is.
Yeah, so the reality is when people go missing, they won't carry on all this attention. I wonder if they'd already scaled down. So it seemed to me when Jason sort of was just walking along the river and found Nicola, there were no police around, were there? He had to ring the police to get them there. Maybe they'd already scaled down a little bit. Yeah, they won't carry on forever with all this. You know, it costs money. It all comes down to money, doesn't it?
Yeah, public resources are limited. You know, policing resources are limited. You know, all of this costs money and huge amounts of money. So the police will have to be in a position where very shortly they say, you know, we have to scale back. There are police officers walking around here. You know, throughout the whole of yesterday, there's a lot of police officers here. The helicopter was up here yesterday, and we can see from those photographs, the video there, that actually that search still continues in the wider element. They've now searched all the way down to the sea. So, and the inquiries are still ongoing. The police officer said yesterday that there are still 40 detectives still working on.
See, when I watched this and I saw these sort of funny little boats, right? You know, how are they going to find a body? You know, unless it's floating on the top. Obviously, we don't need to go around in a boat to see a body floating in the top. You can see that from the side, you know. But I suppose they're thinking that the body would be floating on the top. I don't know. Whew. And were they? Is it because of them thinking that it had gone that far out? Is that that's wasted resources? Well, if they would have listened to what Peter had said, I know he didn't find her in, you know, technically she was there, or if she'd been put there, we don't know. But let's suppose she hadn't been. But he knew that she wouldn't have gone out that far, surely. They all knew that. They said that. So why are they even looking out there and wasting their resources?
I think within the next 7 days, we'll see a huge scaling back of this. And of course, they will still continue to investigate, but those resources that have currently been applied to it will massively shrink, and we'll see a much smaller investigation. Let's draw this to a close. The position is that Nicola Bulley is still missing. We had revelations.
Nicola Bulley, did he say? God, can't even get a name right. That does irritate me.
Yesterday, in terms of her private life, and I think we have to really put that into context. This is a person who was struggling with elements of her life, as we all do at times, and that caused her to be impacted on by certain other elements, whether that be drink, drugs, you know, depression has a huge impact in our life. But she had the support. She had the support.
And then when it came to the inquest, really, the doctor downplayed all these things, didn't she? And she wasn't on any strong drugs. She had no alcohol in her system. But this, you know, this case will stick with me. I'll tell you, I'll be in my 90s still talking about the Nicola Bulley case if nothing's been resolved by then.
Of a loved one. She had the support of family, and she clearly was getting support to some degree, because there was a police call to her address where police turned up with a mental health workers in the car. She was clearly getting that support. What we need now is to get behind Nicola, her family.
Oh, and just another thing I noticed, he's not mentioning, although he's talking about the welfare check, he has not mentioned Nicola going to A&E the following day for this scan on her head injury. He hasn't mentioned that. So did he not know about that then? When did that come out? I mean, that seems to have just been slipped out somewhere. Was it the inquest before that came out? He doesn't mention it at all. I'm sure he would have mentioned it if he knew about it.
Paul, the two kids and the rest of the other families and friends, and support them. Let's not be critical of them. You know, the critical element is not for now. She was going through a difficult time in her life, as we all do, but she's missing. And she's missing in a way that we need to bring her home to her family. Her family are desperate for answers. They put their faith in the police, and I totally understand that. The police have failed in many ways. They failed certainly in their media strategy, but behind the scenes, they're doing a good job. They're working really hard. They're cutting down every single avenue to close those avenues down to get to a point where could she possibly be. What we now need is the public. As the days get warmer, the public will ultimately find Nicola. There may be somebody out there who holds that vital clue. I don't know, but I do know from all the investigation I've done here and the communication I've had with the family and I've had with the police is I do not believe she went into the water by that bridge. And let's just deal with one thing. You know, those people who are being critical, saying, you know, it's wrong. Why are you out there talking about it? There's been criticism for those people online, you know, those armchair detectives come out. I've got years of experience, not just as a police officer, but since then I've reviewed murder investigations. I've investigated some of the biggest cases and found new evidence where police haven't been able to do it. I've brought that into the public domain. And as a direct result of many of my investigations, people get prosecuted. That's why I've come here. I came here specifically to help the family. I've been in contact with Paul, I've been in contact with Emma, and I've spoken to them in detail. They are the people that we need to focus on. They're the people that we need to.
They always associate Emma as family, don't they? Always. Just, and she doesn't bat an eyelid when, you know, an eyelash. She doesn't bat an eyelash when they do. And yet, if you're one of my members and the video and the pictures that I showed you the other night in the members live, Emma's moved on.
To support. Let's pull together. Let's not forget Nicola. Let's keep doing all we can to try and find her. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll keep you updated. Do follow.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So, yeah, very interesting podcast, and I think even more interesting to look at now than it was then, because now we can compare what we know now, what came out at the inquest, with the things that were being thought and said at the time, and we can sift it out and see what was relevant and what wasn't. Whereas, of course, at the time of all those 3 podcasts that we've watched, and the other one from the reporter, and the one that we listened to about the local who was giving his opinion, Connor, about everything, they were all done before Nicola was found, before Nicola's body was found. And then it's when Nicola's body was found that the family, if you like, through the police, gave that scathing complaint to media, didn't they, in general, not just social media, but ITV, Sky News, so-called experts. You know, it was a horrible, I thought it was a particularly horrible and unnecessary. I mean, obviously we all feel for them. They just found their loved one had just been found drowned, their worst fears confirmed. But then to turn on the people who had been, you know, that they'd been appealing to, the people that they'd been giving interviews to, you know, they had voluntarily given interviews, sent voice notes, you know, and then to turn on everybody like that, I thought it was, well, to be honest, I thought it was horrible of them to do that. And, you know, you just have to take into account the fact that they were heartbroken, but to turn on everybody who'd been trying to help when they were asked to help, to just turn on them like that and try and make them feel bad, is really not a very nice thing to do, I'm afraid. Okay, so there you go. Lots more food for thought. Nicola's birthday coming up this week on, this month, in the 12th of October. I'm going to light a big yellow candle for her, and I hope you'll all do the same, or any colour candle. Hope you'll join us in doing that. I have to think of a time that we're going to do it, and we'll try and do it live on, you know, all together, and that'll be a tribute to Nicola. There has been a celebration of Nicola's life from Paul and the friends. I've got some pictures and video of that. Sorry, some photos of that I'm going to put on, that we're going to look at on the members, like the next members live. So thank you for watching. Remember to live and love very carefully. And as always, till I see you again, may your God go with you. Bye.